The city was alive that Friday night, its skyline glittering against the velvet darkness like diamonds scattered across black silk. The restaurants along the riverfront were buzzing with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft background notes of piano music flowing from upscale lounges. For most, it was just another evening to unwind. For Clara Donovan, however, it was the night she had been hired to ruin someone's chance at love. She didn't even want to be here. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed her thrift store dress, a shade of deep red that fit tighter than she liked. She had borrowed it from a friend because her own wardrobe consisted mainly of jeans, plain shirts, and whatever she found on clearance racks. But tonight called for something different, something that might make her blend into the glamorous world she usually only passed by on the bus ride home from work. She wasn't here for herself. Clara had been promised $20, barely enough to cover groceries for the week, in exchange for playing the role of a distraction. Just ruin the blind date, the girl had said earlier that afternoon, her tone sharp and dripping with jealousy. She had approached Clara outside the cafe where Clara sometimes picked up shifts. The stranger had designer sunglasses perched on her head, and the unmistakable air of someone who had always gotten what she wanted. All you have to do is show up at the restaurant, flirt with him, make a scene, whatever. Just make sure it ends badly. Clara hadn't wanted to agree. But the rent notice burning a hole in her bag said otherwise. $20 wasn't much, but it was something. Something was better than nothing. So now she stood on the polished marble floor of Le Rêve, the most exclusive French restaurant in the city. Her thrift store heels pinched her toes as she adjusted her posture, clutching the strap of her purse for courage. She glanced toward the back, where couples dined beneath sparkling chandeliers, waiters gliding past with silver trays. She had never stepped foot in such a place before tonight. Then she saw him, her target. He was seated at a corner table reserved for privacy, wearing a tailored charcoal suit that fit him like it had been crafted for his body alone. Broad shoulders, confident posture, a glass of wine in his hand. His profile was sharp under the golden light, clean jawline, dark hair swept back neatly, a man who looked every bit the powerful CEO he was rumored to be. Ethan Caldwell. She recognized the name from business magazines stacked at the cafe. Billionaire, hotel tycoon, a man whose decisions changed the skyline of the city. He was supposed to be meeting a blind date tonight, someone carefully arranged by his well-meaning friends or family. And Clara was supposed to sabotage it. She took a deep breath, her stomach twisting with guilt. The woman he was waiting for hadn't arrived yet. Clara slid into action, her plan half-formed and shaky. Maybe she could, accidentally, stumble into him, spill a drink, and strike up conversation. Just enough to cause confusion, discomfort. Then she'd leave, job done. But as fate would have it, Ethan's eyes lifted and locked onto hers before she even reached his table. His gaze was steady, penetrating, as though he could see straight through the borrowed dress and the shaky confidence to the truth beneath. Clara froze mid-step, caught in his attention like a deer in headlights. "Miss." His voice was deep, smooth, and commanding even from across the room. He gestured slightly, mistaking her hesitation for intention. "Are you looking for someone?" Clara's throat went dry. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She forced a shaky smile and walked closer, trying to find her words. Actually, yes. I might be," she faltered, hating how nervous she sounded. Ethan tilted his head, studying her with a subtle curiosity. Then, with a gesture that could have dismissed or invited her, Clara couldn't tell which, he motioned to the empty chair across from him. "Why don't you sit?" The words hit her like a shockwave. Her plan had been to sabotage from the sidelines, not sit face to face with the man himself. But his tone carried the kind of authority that made refusal difficult. And before she knew it, Clara's legs carried her forward, and she lowered herself into the seat opposite him. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His eyes were a piercing shade of gray, focused yet unreadable, like storm clouds hiding secrets. His watch gleamed subtly under his cuff, an understated but obvious reminder of wealth. Yet his expression was not harsh, it was intrigued. "You're early," Ethan said after a beat. Clara blinked. "Early? For our date?" Her stomach lurched. Oh no, he thought she was the blind date. The blood rushed to her cheeks. She opened her mouth to correct him, to tell him she wasn't who he thought she was, but the words tangled on her tongue. If she told the truth, she risked ruining everything. If she admitted she was here to interfere, he'd throw her out. And the $20. Her silence seemed to confirm his assumption. Ethan leaned back slightly, his lips curving in the faintest trace of a smile. "I wasn't expecting you to be quite so direct." Usually people like to play coy before sitting down at my table. Clara's pulse hammered. She had no idea what to say, so she forced a small laugh, praying it sounded natural. Well, I guess I'm not like most people. The corner of his mouth lifted. I can see that. The waiter arrived with another glass, filling it for her before she could protest. Clara wrapped her fingers around the stem of the wineglass to steady her hands. She shouldn't drink. Alcohol always made her tongue loose, but refusing might give her away. So she sipped, hoping the rich taste would mask her panic. Tell me, Ethan said, his voice both conversational and commanding. What do you do? Clara's mind raced. She couldn't very well say, I ruin dates for $20. Panic bubbled, and she blurted the first thing that came to mind. I work with people. His eyebrow arched slightly. That's vague. People are vague, she countered quickly, surprising herself with the boldness in her own voice. For the first time, a genuine chuckle escaped him. Low, warm, brief, but real. Clara felt it sink into her chest, disarming her. The conversation unfolded from there, in ways she hadn't expected. He asked about her favorite books, and she told him about the tattered novels she read from the library. He asked if she traveled, and she admitted the farthest she'd ever gone was the neighboring town, though she dreamed of Paris and Rome. He listened, really listened, like her words mattered, like she mattered. And the more she spoke, the more she forgot why she was even there. For hours, they talked as though the rest of the world didn't exist. She made him laugh again, and each time, his eyes softened from their usual intensity. In turn, he shared stories about building his first business, about long nights working with nothing but ambition and coffee to keep him going. He didn't boast, he confessed, with surprising humility, the mistakes he had made along the way. Clara realized then that he wasn't just the billionaire CEO she had seen in magazines. He was a man, human. When the waiter finally cleared the table, Ethan leaned forward, studying her with those storm-gray eyes. You're not what I expected, he said softly. Clara's heart thudded painfully. She wasn't who he expected at all. But she couldn't tell him that, not yet. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, and a shadow crossed his features. Clara caught a glimpse of the message. Where are you? The blind date is waiting outside. Her stomach dropped. The real date. Ethan's eyes flicked back to hers, confusion dawning in his gaze. The silence between them thickened, heavy with unspoken truth. Clara's pulse raced. He was realizing. He was piecing it together. And she knew, this was the moment everything could shatter. The weight of silence pressed down on Clara like a stone. Ethan's sharp, discerning eyes searched hers, flicking from her nervous fingers gripping the stem of the wineglass to the faint blush staining her cheeks. He wasn't the kind of man easily fooled, she realized that now. He built empires from nothing, he dissected boardrooms with a single glance, and he had a knack for peeling back layers to get to the truth. Clara wanted to run. Her instincts screamed at her to stand, make up an excuse, and vanish before everything came crashing down. But her body wouldn't move. Her legs felt anchored to the floor, her lips frozen as Ethan's phone buzzed again. This time he picked it up, reading the message silently before setting it back down with measured calm. The blind date is waiting outside, he repeated, his voice low, controlled, too controlled. Her stomach dropped like a stone in water. He knew. Who are you? Ethan asked, no longer amused, no longer intrigued. His tone carried authority that demanded answers. Clara's throat constricted. She swallowed, feeling the wine burn on the way down. What could she say? The truth, that she had been hired for $20 pathetic to sabotage his evening. That she was a pawn in someone else's jealousy. She forced a shaky breath. I'm sorry. Sorry. His brows furrowed, his jaw tightening. For what, exactly? The weight of his gaze was unbearable. She looked down at her lap, fingers twisting in the fabric of her borrowed dress. I wasn't supposed to be here. I mean, I was, but not like this. Ethan leaned back, crossing his arms, waiting. He wasn't going to let her off with half answers. Clara's voice cracked as she whispered, I was paid to ruin your date. The words spilled into the air like poison, and she immediately wished she could snatch them back. Ethan's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing. But he didn't speak. He let the silence hang, forcing her to continue. She swallowed hard. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I was just going to cause a scene, make it awkward, and leave. I swear, I wasn't trying to, she faltered, the words collapsing in her throat. But then you thought I was her. And I didn't correct you. I couldn't. His gaze hardened, but beneath it, something flickered, hurt. Betrayal. Who paid you? His voice was sharp now, cutting through the haze of her panic. Clara hesitated. She didn't even know the woman's name, only that she had been dripping with wealth and envy. I don't know. Just some woman. She offered me $20 outside the cafe. Ethan stared at her, disbelief washing over his face. $20, he repeated flatly. She nodded miserably. The irony hung heavy in the air. A billionaire CEO, one of the most powerful men in the city, and his evening had been sabotaged for the price of a cheap dinner. Ethan exhaled slowly, his fingers drumming once against the table before stilling. He studied her again, and this time his gaze lingered, as though searching for something deeper. Why? He asked finally. Clara blinked. Why? What? Why did you agree? His tone wasn't angry now, it was quieter, probing. You don't strike me as the type to meddle in strangers' lives for pocket change. So why? The question hit her harder than she expected. She had told herself it was just about the money. But sitting across from him now, under the weight of his eyes, the truth clawed at her chest. Her rent notice, the empty pantry, the overdue electric bill, the exhaustion of working 2 jobs and still falling short every month. I needed the money, she whispered, her voice breaking. I know it sounds pathetic, but $20 means groceries for me. It means surviving another week. Ethan's expression shifted, softening ever so slightly, though his posture remained guarded. He was a man used to being deceived, used to motives being masked. But something in Clara's trembling honesty pierced through. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he stood abruptly, his chair scraping softly against the floor. Clara's heart sank. This was it, he was going to call security, throw her out, maybe even make sure she never set foot in places like this again. Instead, Ethan extended a hand. Come with me. Clara's breath hitched. What? Come with me, he repeated firmly, his gaze locked on hers. I don't like being lied to. But something tells me your story isn't finished. And I want the truth, all of it. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She hesitated only a second before slipping her hand into his. His grip was strong, steady, pulling her to her feet. He led her past the elegant tables, past the curious stares of other diners, and out into the cool night air. The city lights reflected off the river, the hum of traffic blending with distant laughter. Ethan's sleek black car waited at the curb, a driver opening the door at his silent nod. Clara froze. Wait, I can't, I shouldn't. You can, Ethan interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. Unless you plan on running back to whoever hired you. Is that what you want? She shook her head quickly. No. Then get in. Her heart pounded as she slid into the luxurious leather interior, the scent of cedar and faint cologne wrapping around her. Ethan entered after her, the door shutting with a decisive thud. The car pulled away, the city blurring past. For several minutes, silence hung between them, thick and charged. Clara fidgeted, her nerves unraveling. Finally, Ethan spoke. Tell me about yourself. She blinked at him. What? You've told me why you were here tonight. Now I want to know who you are when no one's paying you to play a part. His eyes fixed on her, unwavering. Clara bit her lip, then exhaled slowly. I'm no one, just a girl trying to make it through each day without losing everything. I work at a cafe. Sometimes I babysit or clean houses to make ends meet. My mom passed away 3 years ago, and my dad left when I was little. It's just me, and every day feels like I'm running a race I can't win. Her voice cracked, and she turned toward the window, embarrassed by the tears brimming in her eyes. She hadn't meant to spill so much. Ethan's gaze softened. He didn't interrupt, didn't dismiss her. He simply listened, the way he had earlier at the restaurant. Where do you live? He asked quietly. In a tiny apartment above a laundromat, she admitted with a weak laugh. The ceiling leaks when it rains, and the heater hasn't worked in 2 winters. But it's home, I guess. Silence followed, but it wasn't cold. It was contemplative, weighted with something unspoken. Finally, Ethan leaned back, studying her profile. You're nothing like the people I usually meet. Clara snorted softly, wiping at her eyes. I'll take that as a compliment. It is, he said firmly. The car slowed, pulling into the private drive of a towering glass building, Ethan's headquarters. The driver stopped, and Ethan gestured for her to follow him inside. Clara hesitated. Why are we here? Because, Ethan said simply, I don't believe in coincidences. You came into my life tonight for a reason, Clara. And I intend to find out what that reason is. Her name on his lips sent a shiver through her. She hadn't told him her name, had she? Then she remembered, the waiter had addressed her earlier when filling her glass. He must have caught it then. Still, the way he spoke, it felt intimate. Dangerous. Inside the gleaming lobby, with its marble floors and towering windows, Clara felt completely out of place. She followed him to a private elevator, the ride up filled with silence that buzzed with unspoken tension. When the doors opened, they stepped into a penthouse office overlooking the entire city. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, the lights twinkling like stars. Clara's breath caught. She had never seen the world from such a height. Ethan turned to face her, his hands slipping into his pockets. "You were hired to sabotage me. But instead, you sat down at my table, and for a few hours, you made me forget everything else. Do you realize how rare that is?" Clara's heart skipped. I didn't mean. I know, he cut in gently. And that's exactly why I'm not sending you away. Her breath hitched. You're not. He shook his head. No, because I want to see what happens if we stop pretending. No games, no lies. Just you and me. Clara's chest ached with the weight of his words. Part of her wanted to run, to retreat back to the safety of her shabby apartment and forget this ever happened. But another part, the part that had laughed with him, shared pieces of herself she had never shared with anyone, longed to stay. She met his storm-gray eyes, and for the first time all night, she let herself believe. Believe that maybe, just maybe, being hired to sabotage a blind date had led her to something she never could have imagined. To someone she never saw coming.